Morning, gang. Happy Sunday morning. So, thought I'd talk about one of those subjects that's kind of near and dear to us all a little bit lately, and that's the precious metals thing. And, I know some people are new here, and also wanted to kind of give you a little bit of the logic behind everybody saying buy silver, buy gold, whatever would be. Okay. Uh, and I know a lot of people skirt the issue. I mean, about the only one I know that does a really good job on explaining it is Rudy over at the Alaska Prepper. Okay. But I kind of want to give you just a little bit of the economic side, from this coconut here on what's going on. So I wanted to give you some figures like I always do. So we'll start here. So, nearly 198,000 metric tons of gold have been mined over the course of history. Okay, that's according to the World Gold Council. About 1.74 million metric tons of silver have been mined. Okay, so obviously silver far exceeds the amount of gold. Well, that makes sense. Gold's a lot more expensive than silver. Okay, there's less supply, therefore there's a higher cost. Now, the three leading countries that produce silver, at least in 2019, were Mexico, Peru, and China. The three leading gold-producing countries, China, Australia, and South Africa, both in that order. Do you notice which country appears on both lists? China. Okay. Now, maybe you can see a little bit why the Chinese are so thrilled to see the world's economies collapse. They have the raw materials, the precious metals, okay, that will be and have been for centuries the standard form of transferable currency on their land. Okay, I mean, they can mine it, right? So that brings the question: how much gold and silver are waiting, or still in the ground, waiting to be mined? And again, from the World Gold Council, they estimate that there's about 54,000 metric tons of gold that remains to be mined, versus about 560 metric tons of silver that's still below the ground. Okay. Now, the global production of silver in 2020 amounted to about 25,000 metric tons. Okay. That's way up from where it was in 2005 when it was just over 20,000. Okay. As for gold last year, it was about 2,500 metric tons. So again, we're getting 10 times the silver out of the ground that we are gold. Okay. But if you back this up and do the math to it, okay, with how much is supposedly left and how much we're mining, that means there's about 22 years till all the silver is mined and about 21 years till all the gold is mined, okay? This is why silver is what you need for wealth preservation and wealth accumulation, both of them. And I know some people say it's not for wealth accumulation, but in the long term, yes, it would be. Okay, don't listen to anybody who tells you otherwise, and I'll explain why. Okay, first on wealth preservation. Okay, some of you guys are old enough to remember this, but back in the 1980s, you had a run on the price of silver all the way up to about $50 an ounce, from about $6 an ounce in January of 2019, January of 1979 to $50 or almost $50 in January 1980. Okay. That was the whole Hunt Brothers debacle. Now, they manipulated the market. They were highly leveraged, kind of like how the stock market crashed in the Great Depression in 1929. Everybody borrowed money like crazy to buy it. Well, they were doing it in the silver market. And in the end, they wound up losing over $1 billion. Okay, now remember, this is 1980, okay, when $1 billion meant something. It wasn't the latest contract that some star athlete signed, okay? But nothing goes up eightfold in 1 year without the risk of a massive crash. I mean, I don't care if you could talk about Bitcoin or Amazon stock or whatever. I mean, both of those can plunge in a heartbeat, okay? But see, a silver run, like it was back then, is very similar to a bank run, okay? Eventually, it's all gone, okay? Silver in this case versus cash in the case of a bank run, all right? If you don't have any, when the bank run's done, you're left out in the cold. And again, go back to 1929, the bank runs and everybody went to the bank to get cash and the bank said, we don't have any more. And that was it. You didn't have anything, okay? Now, monetary demand for silver is essentially a run on the dollar, okay, which is itself primarily a monetary reserve anyway, okay? The way you stop a run on the dollar is that you raise interest rates on the dollar. And this is why I talk all the time about watching the 10-year note and rising rates, okay? Raising rates was possible in the 1980s, again, the Hunt Brothers debacle, when it last hit $50, because debt levels were much lower back then than they are now, and stocks were also nowhere near highs, okay? This is exactly what, then Fed Chair Paul Volcker did. He raised the overnight interest rates, on the dollar to nearly 20%, so as to increase the dollar as the monetary reserve, not so much as silver. That's not possible this time, okay? The economy is totally different than it was 40 years ago. We are now a debt-driven economy, okay? And like Rudy says all the time, your dollar bill basically is a promissory note. It's not real currency, all right? The only way the economy works now is if people are constantly borrowing money. And we all know we aren't doing that right now. Like I said in a previous video, the average household debt has actually gone down 4 straight months now because people are paying debt. I mean, what did I say? The figure of this stimulus checks or whatever, only 30% is making it back in the economy. The other 70% is using to pay down debt. People are being smart with their personal finances while the government is being idiotic with the nation's finances, okay? So raising rates is out of the question, okay? Then you have the stock market point. A hike in rates will cause a sell-off in the stock market, and that in turn hurts consumer confidence and destroys wealth. So that means they can't raise rates here either, okay? Again, I go back to my days with Alan Greenspan, and, everybody was hanging on the edge of the table every time he'd come and talk. Is he going to raise rates? Is he going to lower rates? And I remember sitting at my desk and it was like, Greenspan raises rates 25 basis points, and I'd watch the Dow, again, this is 20 years ago, I'd watch the Dow drop 300-400 points, in seconds. That's just what happens. So if you can't raise the rates, the other way to stop a dollar run is in a flight to precious metals as a monetary reserve, and a flight to precious metals as monetary reserve, is to push the paper price of silver, the spot price that we talk about all the time, down by shorting the silver futures. And this is where the banks are really involved, okay? Banks have a vested interest in doing this because if the dollar falls too fast, which it's doing now, I mean, falling dollar is the polite way of saying inflation, okay? The value of the bonds on their balance sheet plummets, okay, causing a systemic banking crisis, and then we're all screwed. So pushing the price of silver down by shorting futures has another consequence, though, is it prolongs the actual shortage, the physical shortages, okay? So you see what's going on now. The silver shortage, it isn't really a shortage after all, okay? It's just that demand is outstripping supply. It's the same thing we saw last year in toilet paper and ammunition, okay? Remember, silver is still a manufactured item, just as is gold, all right? It's dug from the earth, but then it needs to be minted into coins or bars or skulls or bullets or whatever, okay? And that takes time, all right? You see, everyone and their brother is buying silver right now, and hence the shortages we're seeing. But there's still silver in the world, at least for the next 20-odd years, okay? Then when there's no more supply, that's when the prices go sky high. Because remember, silver is used in batteries, in dentistry, in glass coatings, in LED chips, in medicine, in nuclear reactors, in photography, in solar panels, in RFID chips, in semiconductors, in touch screens, in water purification, and I can go on for another half an hour. All right. But with everything going on in the world, I don't see any end to the desire for electric cars or solar energy or computers. So that means silver is going to continue to be needed. Yet we all know it's a dwindling supply, okay? Just told you. It's not like Tesla or Intel are going to stop making product, right? It's like, oh my God, there's no more silver. Elon Musk is going to go, poof, I'm no longer making cars. Not going to happen. They'll pay for the silver. They'll just pass along the cost to you in the cost of a car, all right? They got to get silver from somewhere. That's the reason you need to have it, okay? Now, I told you guys a couple of weeks ago that support for silver, technical charts, the bottom, okay, was about 25 bucks on the spot market. And when it bottomed out, it came in about 25.15, so it's pretty close. I also said that when we were at 30 bucks after the whole Reddit Rangers thing, or Reddit Raiders, I guess, that was going to be short-lived and we'd pull back. Now, that happened too. Okay, now, not that I'm some sort of genius or whatever, but I do pay attention to this stuff. Now, the spot price on silver closed at $26 and a penny over the weekend. Not cheap, but not expensive. I'll still say that you need to be buying silver here and dollar cost averaging. Buy a little each paycheck if you're at that point in your preps. I mean, meaning, of course, you've got a year's worth of food put away. You got a way to replenish your food, whether you're livestock or garden or whatever it would be. You've got your protection. Y'all know what I mean by that. It's already in your possession. Of course, you should be paying off your debt as fast as possible. But, even if you go out and buy one coin every paycheck, say 30 to 35 bucks after premium, that's good. Okay, get something. Now, I've seen stories and bloggers that say silver's 50 bucks by the end of the year. I've seen people say $1,000, silver price eventually. Sure, if eventually is a long way off. I don't think 50 bucks is probable this year, but it is possible, okay, depending on how the dollar and the economy goes, though mid-30s is pretty likely this year. Then, of course, in 20 years, when it all runs out, who knows where it goes, okay? Silver could be old news by then. But if you don't believe me that it could be very lucrative for wealth accumulation in the long term, take a look at rhodium. Okay, rhodium's the stuff that's in your catalytic converter. Back in 2018, so 3 years ago, not even, it's about 2 years and 9 months ago, rhodium was about $2,000 an ounce. What did it close at this weekend? $28,000 an ounce. Okay, so yes, there is the potential for this stuff to go up, like I said, for wealth accumulation as well. Silver's a prep to have. It's a good barter item for short term. It's a good wealth preservation item for intermediate term, and it's a good wealth accumulation item for long term. Okay. Plus, you hold it in your hand. You have it physically. Okay. It's not a promissory note like a dollar bill is, or a stock certificate that could one day be worthless. Okay. Sure, one day silver may be worthless. Okay. But I'm going to bet personally, thousands of years of history ain't wrong. After all, we're not the ones that are trying to rewrite history. Have a good one, guys. Pinball out.